Hi there, and welcome to the Cory Doctorow podcast. I'm back from a great family getaway this weekend to Wales. We went and visited a friend, Ben Laurie, and his family at their farm in Wales, and spent the weekend seeing cows and little ponies and horses in the nearby fields, and generally having a very good time. Ben's a crypto guy, and his dad, who's kind of a historian and computer programmer, was there, and we just really had a great weekend building things out of magnetic connectors and talking about crypto and security, copyright, and the history of people who dug tunnels under London. It was really quite a remarkable weekend. This weekend, on the other hand, I'm going to be hanging around in London, apparently in a hotel, although my wife won't tell me where. It's my birthday, and I'm going to be surprised, apparently. July the 17th. I'll be 39 years old. Next week, early in the week, I'm going to be also in London, but it's something that you're invited to. On the 20th, Clerkenwell Tales is having myself and China Mayville out for a night in Clerkenwell at the Church of the Holy Redeemer next to Clerkenwell Tales in Exmouth Market. It's free, but you need to RSVP to Clerkenwell Tales if you're in London. Please do come along. Robert Sharp from English Pen will be introducing the event. It should be a lot of fun. And then a little heads up, I'll remind you of this as it grows nearer. I'm going abroad from July the 29th through August the 29th. I'll be on a family holiday. No email, no phone, no other communications, just hanging out with friends and really enjoying myself and taking a little break from everything, sitting on a lake by a cottage with the family. So I hope that you have a great August, and I plan on having a great August too. All right, let's get down to more of Pirate Cinema, written by Cory Doctorow and Michael Skeet. They herded us back downstairs without a word. The crowd moved with utter docility, and I could see the logic of the proceedings. Terrified, blood sugar bottomed out, thirsty, we were completely without fight. On the third floor, the cubicles and desks had all been piled in a corner, making one big space. A few long tables were set up with industrial-sized pots of something that steamed and smelled bland and uninspired. My mouth filled with saliva. "Form an orderly queue," said the sergeant from the night before, who was waiting behind one of the pots with an apron over his uniform, a ladle in his hand. He looked each Trustafarian over carefully as they passed through the line, clutching large bowls that were efficiently filled with limp vegetables, lumpy potatoes, and a brown, greasy gravy. Each of us was issued a stale baguette and a cup of orange drink, and sent away. We seated ourselves on the floor and ate greedily off our laps. Here in the mess, the friars relaxed a little and allowed the men and women to mingle. Friends found each other and shared long hugs, then ate in silence. I ate alone, back to a wall, and watched the others. Once everyone had passed through the line, the sergeant began walking through the clusters, stopping to talk and joke. He gently touched people's shoulders, handing out cigarettes, and was generally endearing and charming. He made his way over to me. "Monsieur Rosen." "Sergeant." He sat down beside me. "How is the food?" "Oh, very good," I said, without irony. "Would you like some baguette?" "No, thank you." I tore off a hunk of bread and sopped up some gravy. "It is a shame about your friend on the roof." I grunted. Pottymouth had been no friend of mine, and in a situation like this one, I knew, you have to discriminate in apportioning your loyalty. "Ah," he stared thoughtfully at the Trustafarians. "You understand, though, why it had to be?" "I suppose." "Huh?" "Well, once he was taken care of, the rest saw that there was no point in struggling." "Yes, I suppose that was part of it. The other part is that there is no place in war for disobedience." "War. Huh." The sergeant read my face. "Oh yes, Monsieur Rosen. War. We're still fighting street to street in the northern suburbs, and some say that the Americans are pushing for a UN peacekeeping mission. They're calling it Operation Havana. I'm afraid that your government takes a dim view of our nationalizing their stores and offices." "Not my government, Sergeant." "Abelaine? Francois Abelaine? I apologize. I'd forgotten that you are a Canadian. Where did you say you live?" "I have a flat on the Rue Texas." Yes, far from the fighting. You and the other étrangers behave as though our struggle here were nothing but an uninteresting television program. It couldn't last. You had pitched your tents on the side of a smoking volcano, and the lava has reached you." "What does that mean?" It means that our army needs support staff, cooks, mechanics assistants, supply clerks, janitors, office staff. Every loyal Parisian is already giving everything he can afford to the cause. It is time that you, who have enjoyed Paris' splendor in comfort and without cost, pay for your stay. Sergeant, no offense, but I have rent receipts in my filing cabinet. I pay for groceries. I am paying for my stay. The sergeant lit a cigarette and inhaled deeply. Some bills can't be settled with money. When you fight for the freedom of the group must pay for it. Freedom? Ah. He looked out at the Trustafarians, who were leaning against each other, eyes downcast, utterly dejected. In the cause of freedom, it may be necessary to abridge the personal liberties of a few individuals. But this isn't slave labor. Each of you will be paid in good communal franc at the going rate. It won't hurt these spoiled children to do some honest work. I decided that if the chance ever came, I'd kill Sergeant Francois Abelaine. I swallowed my anger. My cousin, a young girl named Sissy, she was taken last night. She was just passing through and asked me to take her out to the club. My aunt must be crazy with worry. The sergeant pulled his clipboard out of his coat pocket and snapped it open. He scritched on it. What is her last name? Black. Sissy, He scritched more and scrawled at the display. He scritched again. Monsieur Rosen, I'm very sorry, but there's no record of any Sissy Black here. Could she have given us a false name? I thought about it. I hadn't seen Sissy for 10 years before she emailed me that she was coming to Paree. She'd always struck me as a very straight, sheltered kid, though I'd been forced to revise my opinion of her upward after she gutted out that long bus ride. Still, I couldn't imagine her having the news to make up a name on the spot. I don't think so. What does that mean? Probably a clerical error. You see, we're all so overworked. That is why you're here, really. I'll speak with Sergeant Dumont. She handled women's intake. I'm sure everything is fine. Our training began the next morning. Like high school gym class with heavily armed teachers. Running, squats, jumping jacks, even a rope climb. Getting us in shape was the furthest thing from their minds. This was all about dulling what little sense of initiative we might have left. I tried to stay focused on Sissy, on where she might have gone or what might have happened to her. For a few days my speculations got darker and darker, until in my mind's eye I saw her being used as some sort of sex toy by the senior members of the Commune. I had no reason to believe this. The communards were like the Victorians or their Maoists in their determination not to let sex get in the way of politics. But I was running out of even remotely acceptable possibilities. And then one afternoon I realized I hadn't thought of her at all since waking. The fatigue had fried my brain, and all I could think about was my next rest break. Once we'd been thoroughly pacified, they started taking us out on work gangs of 10 or 15, clearing rubble and repainting storefronts. On a particularly lucky day, I got to spend 10 hours deep in rebuilt communard territory, laying down epoxy cobblestones. We worked in a remote cul-de-sac, a power-armored frere blocking the only exit route, so motionless that I wondered if he was asleep. I worked alone, as was my habit. I had no urge to become war buddies with any of the precious tots I'd been conscripted with. I'd never been this deep into the rebuilt zone before. It was horrible, a mixture of nouveau and deco, perpetrated by someone who had no understanding of either. The communards had turned the narrow storefronts into 1930s movie sets, painted over their laser-printed signage in fanciful, curly-cued Toulouse-Lautrec script. Carefully concealed speakers piped out distant hot jazz with convincing Victrola hiss, clinking stemware, and Gallic laughter. We arrived just after dawn, and within a very short time my knees were killing me. A few Parisians had trickled down the block, a baker who cranked out his awning and set baskets of baguette in the window, a few femmes de ménage with sexy skirts, elaborate updos, and cat's-eye glasses clacked down the street. A gang of insouciant lads flicked their cigarette ends at us poor groveling conscriptees and swaggered on. I managed to keep it together until the organ grinder arrived. It was the monkey that did it. Or maybe it was the Edith Piaf cylinder he had in his hurdy-gurdy. On balance, it was the way the monkey danced to Piaf. I started chuckling, then laughing, then roaring so hysterical that I actually flopped over on my back and writhed on the cobblestones I'd laid down. The Parisians tried to ignore me, but I was making quite a spectacle of myself. Eventually they all slunk away, looking embarrassed and resentful. I stared at the gray sky and held my belly and snorted as they departed, and then a patch of cobblestones beside me exploded, showering me with resinous shrapnel, bruising my ribs and my arm. The power armor at the street's entrance lowered his power fist pistol and broadcasted a simple order. Work! It seemed less funny after that. Edith may have regretted nothing, but I started setting new records for self-pity. I'm pretty sure I lost track of the time while we were trapped in that old office block. Maybe I was concussed. The Freres weren't shy about slapping us around. I doubt it, though. More likely, I just stopped thinking as a way to get through the days. Until the evening, they started dividing us into groups. The Freres said nothing as they culled people from the block in the mess hall. The smaller Trustafarians had been clustered into 2 groups. No heavy labor for them, was my guess. Unlike the scene when we were brought in, there was almost no noise. There was no sign of Sissy, but with our heads shaved, I'm not sure I'd have recognized her. I had just identified one group as being visually different when a pointing finger directed me into it, giving me the opportunity to study its members close up. We were a sullen-faced bunch, and I had this sudden, chilling feeling that wasn't helped in the slightest by the Frere who grinned at us as he nudged us out the door of the mess hall. He's like a herdsman, I thought, and looking again at the faces of the Trustafarians around me, I guessed that we were the group of troublemakers. We were being culled. All right, talk to you next week. You've been listening to the Cory Doctorow podcast, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike US 3.0, or as Woody Guthrie put it in another context, this song is copyrighted in the US under seal of copyright 154085 for a period of 28 years, and anyone caught singing it without our permission will be a mighty good friend of ourn, because we don't give a darn. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it, we wrote it, that's all we wanted to do. Many thanks to John Taylor Williams for mastering. That's Ryneck Studio, WRYNECK Studio at gmail.com. John Taylor Williams is a full-time self-employed audio engineer, producer, composer, and sound designer. In his free time, he makes beer, jewelry, odd musical instruments, and furniture. He likes to meditate, to read, and to cook. Talk to you next week.